He had another family all along and thought I'd never find out. The truth shattered everything. I never imagined my life would turn into something that looked like a bad soap opera, but here we are. I thought I had the perfect marriage, a loving husband, a comfortable home, and plans for the future. For 7 years, I truly believed we were building a life together, one brick at a time. I bragged to my friends about how supportive he was, how he always made me feel safe, and how lucky I felt to have found the one. But all of that came crashing down one evening with a single phone call. A phone call that revealed my husband wasn't just my husband. He was also someone else's that had started with an unfamiliar number lighting up his phone. Normally, I never snoop, but something about the way he froze when I glanced at the screen made my stomach drop. He snatched the phone so quickly it nearly fell out of his hands. Later that night, when he was asleep, I couldn't resist. I checked his messages. What I found made my blood run cold. A woman was texting him things like, "The kids can't wait for you to come home," and "Don't forget we promised to take them to the zoo this weekend." Kids, home, zoo. My mind was spinning. At first, I wanted to believe it was some sort of misunderstanding. Maybe it was his cousin, maybe a coworker joking around. But deep down, I knew. My husband wasn't just hiding something small. He was hiding an entire life. A second family. The next day, I couldn't look at him the same way. Every smile felt fake. Every "I love you" sounded rehearsed. My mind kept replaying those texts. "The kids can't wait for you to come home." Whose kids? Who was this woman? I needed answers. I started digging. I checked the call logs. Hours of conversations I had never noticed before. Always during his so-called late meetings. I pulled up his bank statements. And suddenly things made sense. Mysterious withdrawals. Hotel charges. Money transfers that didn't fit our budget. My heart raced as puzzle pieces started clicking together. Forming a picture I didn't want to see. I sat at the kitchen table with the evidence spread out in front of me. Screenshots of texts, call histories, and receipts. My hands were shaking. I didn't know if I was going to throw up or scream. But one thing was certain. I couldn't keep pretending nothing was wrong. That night, when he came home, I studied his face like a detective. The way he set his keys down, loosened his tie, asked me about my day. Everything looked so normal. But beneath that calm exterior, I knew he was living a double life. And the worst part? He looked me in the eyes and acted like nothing was wrong. The following morning felt like a blur. I woke up earlier than usual, not because I was rested, but because my mind simply wouldn't let me sleep. My body was tense, my stomach knotted, and the weight of suspicion pressed against my chest like a stone. That I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of untouched coffee, staring at my phone. I couldn't get those words out of my head. "The kids can't wait for you to come home." That one line had cracked something inside me. And once a crack appears, it spreads. By mid-morning, I decided I couldn't just sit around waiting for the truth to come to me. I needed to find it myself. So, I went through his call logs. At first, nothing seemed odd, just work numbers and a few short calls. But then I noticed a pattern, a number saved without a name, appearing almost every night around the same time he claimed to be working late. The calls weren't just quick check-ins. Some lasted over an hour. I felt my pulse in my ears. Who spends an hour on the phone during supposed late-night meetings? I dug deeper. I remembered he sometimes left his laptop bag in the living room. My hands were trembling, but I forced myself to unzip it. Inside, I found crumpled receipts. Hotels, restaurants, places we had never gone to together. I spread everything out on the table, the phone logs, the receipts, screenshots of messages I had secretly taken before he could delete them. My hands hovered over the evidence like I was piecing together a puzzle I desperately wished wasn't real. But the picture forming before me was undeniable. When he finally came home that evening, I watched him carefully. Every movement felt like a performance. He tossed his keys into the bowl by the door, loosened his tie, and kissed me lightly on the cheek. "How was your day?" he asked casually, like we were just another happy couple. But as I looked at him, all I saw were lies. His smile, his calm tone, even the way he poured himself a glass of water, it all felt rehearsed, like he had done this dance too many times before. I decided not to confront him right away. I wanted to see how far he would go, how many lies he would stack on top of one another before the tower finally crumbled. So, I played along. At dinner, I asked, "So, how was work today?" He sighed, rubbed his forehead, and muttered something about an exhausting meeting that went longer than expected. My chest burned. I knew exactly where he had been, and it wasn't a meeting. Are they at least paying you overtime for all these late nights? I pressed, forcing a smile that he chuckled nervously and shook his head. Nah, that's just how the job is. You know how it goes. I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded and excused myself to the kitchen, pretending I needed to grab something. My hands clenched the countertop so tightly my knuckles went white. Later that night, as he scrolled mindlessly through TikTok, I lay next to him in bed, wide awake. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the sound of his fake laughter at videos, wondering how he could sit there, inches away from me, and still carry on this double life without flinching. Finally, around midnight, when he drifted off to sleep, I slipped out of bed and went to the living room. I opened his laptop, something I had never dared to do before. And there it was. Messages, emails, conversations with her. He called her baby. He promised her trips, love, and a future. He even talked about their kids, as if the life we built together didn't exist at all. I scrolled through pages of betrayal until my vision blurred with tears. That moment, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was furious. Furious that I had given so much of myself to a man who treated me like I was disposable. Furious that he could come home, kiss me goodnight, and then dream about someone else. And as I closed that laptop, one thought solidified in my mind. This charade had to end. The next morning, I couldn't pretend anymore. I went through my routine like a ghost. Shower, hair, makeup, coffee. The mirror reflected the same face, but my eyes looked older, like I had aged 5 years overnight. I packed a tote bag with things I suddenly felt protective of: my passport, a few cherished photos, a USB stick, my grandmother's necklace. It felt dramatic, but some instinct said, be ready. At work, I couldn't focus. My inbox flooded. I answered nothing. I opened a blank document and started writing down the timeline, a clean, chronological record, dates of late meetings, the bank transactions, screenshots and email subjects, the message about the zoo. I printed the list and slid it into a manila folder. The physicality of paper helped. It turned a foggy nightmare into a case file. At lunch, I parked in a quiet lot near a small playground. Children laughed. A mom tied a sparkly shoe. I stared at them and wondered about the other woman, the one with kids who couldn't wait for him to come home. I felt a wave of nausea. Had he pushed a stroller for them with the same easy hands that held my waist? Had he practiced spelling words with someone else's little boy while texting me? Be home soon, babe. Back at my desk, my phone lit up. Him. Don't forget we're having dinner with Ben and Kara Friday. Me. Right. Him. You okay? You've been quiet. Me. Just tired. Tired. Of course. The universal anesthetic we use when the truth is too sharp to touch in daylight. That evening, he arrived with tulips. He rarely brought flowers. Yellow. Cheerful. Wrong. Thought you could use a pick-me-up, he said, setting them in a vase and kissing my cheek. His lips were warm, familiar, treacherous. We ate. He told a story about a client who always changes specs last minute. I nodded in the right places. Then I said lightly, funny how often you and that client wrap up around 9:30, and I watched his face. A hairline crack appeared, just a flicker, in the smooth porcelain mask. After dinner, he showered. I opened the laundry hamper and my breath caught. His shirt smelled unfamiliar. Not perfume exactly, laundered cotton with a faint, sugary note, like fabric softener we didn't use. Proof wasn't just pixels anymore. It lived in fibers. I folded his shirt slowly, the way you fold a flag. Then I tucked the manila folder under the bookshelf, where I could reach for it without looking. My heart thudded in a slow, steady drum. Not yet, I told myself. Prepare. Don't perform. That night, I slept hard for the first time in days. Not because I was at peace, but because my mind had shifted into resolve. On Thursday, I booked a session with a therapist I found through my company's EAP. I didn't even know what I would say until I sat in the softly lit room. The smell of tea leaves in the air, and the sentence tumbled out. I think my husband has another family. Her face was calm. She didn't flinch. Tell me what makes you think so. I told her everything. The texts, the calls, the receipts, the scent on the shirt. I told her how I'd built a timeline. I told her how I'd started packing irreplaceable things. She nodded, and when I finished, she said something I didn't know I needed. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You are seeing patterns and corroborating evidence. Your nervous system is responding to betrayal. It's doing exactly what it's designed to do, protect you. I felt the sting of tears. To be told I wasn't hysterical or paranoid, that was a salve. What do you want? She asked, and I stared at the floor. The truth formed like a slow sunrise. I want him to tell me the entire truth without lying. And if he can't, I want out. Then decide how you want the truth to come to light, she said. Where, when, and how. Choose a setting that gives you control, safety, clarity. Witnesses if needed. I left her office with a steadier spine. Control. Not of him. Of the scene. On the way home, I stopped at a stationery store and bought 3 simple spiral notebooks. On the first page of the first notebook, I wrote with a black pen, Friday, 7 p.m., dinner with Ben and Kara. In smaller letters below. Ask about his schedule. Ask about zoo. Ask about project deadlines. I didn't plan to do it in front of our friends. I wasn't that cruel to them, but I knew having a social anchor might keep him from storming out later. Back home, I set the table carefully. Plates, cutlery, 2 wine glasses, 2 water glasses. He watched me from the doorway. You okay? He asked again. Yeah, I said. Just want Friday to go smoothly. He smiled. A flicker of relief. I smiled back, thinking, tomorrow, you'll tell me who you really are. Friday came dressed like any other day and then started shedding its costume at dusk. He showered, shaved, put on the charcoal button-down I used to love. I wore a navy wrap dress that meant business without looking hostile. We got in the car. He hummed with the radio. I watched the blur of streetlights like a metronome counting down. At the restaurant, Ben and Kara were 10 minutes late. The hostess sat us anyway at a small booth near the back, half privacy, half exposure. He ordered a bottle of red and made a joke about finally catching up like adults. I nodded, palms flat on my lap to keep them from shaking. Ben and Kara arrived, breathless and apologizing, and the first 20 minutes became small talk. Work, weather, TV. Ordinary life held me together like stitches. Then Ben asked casually, so, how's the new client? Still keeping you chained to the desk late? He laughed. You have no idea, he said, and took a sip. We've been closing at 9 most nights. The word we scraped my bones. Must be brutal. Kara said sympathetically. He shrugged. Part of the game. I rolled my glass by the stem, then asked in a voice I'd practiced in the mirror. Do your teammates have kids? He blinked. Some of them? What? Just curious, I said and smiled. You've been so great with the Andersons' kids at barbecues. I wondered if that's your outlet since you don't have time for coaching anymore. He nodded, cautious. Yeah, I like kids. You know that, right? I said, and held his gaze. Kids who can't wait for you to come home. Time stopped. The booth felt colder. Ben shifted, puzzled. Kara looked at me, then at him. He went very still. I don't know what you mean, he said after a beat, but his voice carried a tremor. Then I'll be clear, I said, laying my phone on the table face up. I read the messages. I saw the transfers. I matched the nights to receipts and geolocation. I know about the zoo. Ben's mouth opened a fraction. Kara reached for her water. He swallowed. Let's not do this here, he said, low. Here is fine, I said just as quietly. Because here, you don't get to slam a door or turn this into yelling. Here, you can decide to tell the truth. Or you can choose silence, and I'll proceed accordingly. Proceed, he repeated, voice fraying. What does that mean? It means I have a therapist. It means I've spoken to an attorney for a consult. I said, I steady. It means I've backed up everything. You can decide if you want to participate in your own honesty. A long silence spread out like a tablecloth. Kara cleared her throat. We can give you two some space, she whispered to Ben, already sliding out of the booth. Ben followed. We were alone. He exhaled, a shudder. Okay, he said finally. There's someone else. The words hit like hailstones. Then the next ones came. It's been a while. How long? I asked. He stared at the salt shaker. 1.5 years. The math rolled over me. I gripped the edge of the table. And the kids? I asked. The question tasted like rust. She had them before. But they think of me as what? I asked. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone older. As home. He didn't answer. We moved the conversation to the car because the room had turned into a microscope. He drove because my hands were shaking. We didn't go home. We parked in a lot facing a quiet, dark baseball field, the floodlights off, the diamond a ghost. Who is she? I asked that. He told me a name that meant nothing. He said he'd met her at a client event. She'd laughed at his jokes. She'd been going through a lot. He kept using that phrase, a parachute to soften the fall, going through a lot. She had 2 kids and a complicated custody situation. They needed stability. He had become dependable. Dependable. The word made me bark out a laugh. You've been dependable for them, I said. And what have you been for me? A hologram. He clenched the steering wheel. It wasn't supposed to happen. It started as helping with errands, then dinners. Then they started calling me when their dad bailed. It felt good to be needed. Needed, I echoed. So you build another life where you get parades for showing up. He winced. That's not fair. Fair. I stared out at the field. You built a secret city and told me it was overtime. Silenced. I asked practical questions then, because my brain was desperate for ground. How many nights? Where did the money go? Did anyone else know? He answered, haltingly. 3 nights a week, sometimes 4. Money for groceries, school supplies, things their mom needed. He insisted no one at his job knew. He swore there was no baby that was his. My mind cataloged facts while my heart sank through the floor. Finally, I said, why didn't you divorce me first? He flinched. I didn't want to lose you, he said, thick-voiced. I kept thinking I would fix it. I kept thinking it was temporary, that it would resolve. Resolve how? I asked, incredulous. That she disappears? That her kids stop needing dinner? He had no answer. Of course he didn't. Double lives aren't built with plans. They're built with avoidance and good intentions that rot. That I turned to him. You're going to tell me everything, I said evenly. Not tonight. You'll write it down. Timeline. Dates. Receipts. The truth, without protecting your image. Then we'll talk to a mediator. We will separate. You will not fight me on the house or the savings. And you will not contact me until you have delivered full disclosure in writing. He stared at me like I'd spoken another language. Please, he said, tears in his eyes for the first time. Don't end this. I can stop. I can end it with her. I shook my head, a slow, final motion. You already ended us, I said. You just forgot to tell me. We sat in silence. The field lay before us, empty and honest. The next days moved like liquid glass, slow, clear, sharp at the edges. He slept in the guest room while I moved through the house like a curator, touching objects and deciding which held meaning and which were merely props. I called my therapist again. I called the attorney for a formal consult. I told 2 close friends, my witnesses, who came over with soup and a fierce, quiet presence that kept me from dissolving. He handed me a typed timeline on Wednesday. It was bad and also worse than bad. It was ordinary: dinners, help with homework, movie nights, zoo day, pancake Sunday. I marked the margins with a pen, cross-referencing with my folder. When I finished, there were no holes left big enough to crawl through. We met with a mediator on Friday. The room was neutral on purpose. Beige walls, soft chairs, a plant trying its best. He looked smaller. I felt larger and also hollow. The mediator asked about assets, accounts, intentions. He said he wanted to try counseling. I said counseling isn't glue, it's a mirror. We agreed to a separation agreement while we figured out the rest. He cried quietly afterward in the elevator. I didn't touch him. I didn't hate him. Hate would have been warmer. I was done. That night, when he left for a hotel, I sat on the living room floor with the tulips, now slumped, and I cried until my face throbbed. Not for him. For the version of me that had believed in a safe, simple life. I cried for the kindness I'd given someone who treated it like a resource to exploit. And I cried for the invisible woman across town, complicated, flawed, human, who had built a fantasy out of my reality. Then I stood up, threw the tulips away, wiped the counters, and opened the windows. The house felt different with fresh air in it. Weeks later, the practicalities had shapes, separate accounts, a signed temporary agreement, a schedule for dividing furniture. He sent long emails, apologies that read like memoir drafts. I skimmed them for logistics and deleted the paragraphs that tried to cast him as tragic. I wasn't the audience anymore. One Saturday morning, I drove to a nearby lake with a thermos of coffee and the first spiral notebook. The water was slate blue, flecked with light. Joggers passed. A dog chased a stick and came back victorious. I opened the notebook and wrote 3 headings. What was? What is? What I want next. Under what was, I wrote. I was a person who thought love meant assuming the best even against evidence. Under what is, I wrote. I am a person who can hold evidence and honor my own eyes. Under what I want next, I wrote. A life where honesty isn't something I have to excavate, that I close the notebook and let the sun find my face. I breathed in damp earth, coffee, lake water. For a moment, the ache loosened its grip. On the way home, a message pinged. Not from him, from an unknown number. My heart withered, then fluttered, then steadied as I read. I'm sorry. I don't expect a reply. I didn't know about you at first. Then I did. That doesn't absolve me. I'm fixing my life. The kids won't see him again. I wanted you to know that. I pulled over in a grocery lot and stared at the words. I typed nothing. I owed no one catharsis. I set the phone down and cried again, but differently. Not because of her. Because of closure that didn't need a scene. A month later, I moved into a small apartment with big windows. On the first night, it rained. I unpacked slowly, humming to the patter. I put my grandmother's necklace on the dresser and the manila folder on the top shelf of the closet, behind a box of winter scarves. Not to revisit, but to remind myself, I can build safety from truth. Sometimes, around dusk, a ghost impulse rises. Reach for the version of life where none of this happened. Then I make tea, open a new page in the second spiral notebook, and write about real things I can touch. The taste of bergamot, the sound of rain, the weight of a key that opens my door. People say betrayal hardens you. Maybe. It also clarifies. I am not the woman he depended on to never look closely. I am the woman who looked. And when the picture finally came into focus, I chose myself. And if you're listening to this and you're holding your breath in a house built with soft, careful lies, here's what I learned. Truth doesn't destroy love. It reveals whether love was ever there. That I won't say I'm grateful. I will say I'm free. Thank you for watching this story on True Tales Hub. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our next story. That we post new tales twice a day, and each one comes with unexpected twists you won't see coming.